of God.
Once beloved evangelical circles, Kenneth Copeland, known for his loud speeches and power of speech, has received a life-changing verdict. The verdict is in, and the consequences are severe, sending shockwaves through the Christian community and beyond. This exposé will immerse you in the secretive world of Kenneth Copeland's church, revealing the secrets, scandals, and controversies that ultimately led to the final and irrevocable verdict. The world of televangelism has always been one filled with extraordinary stories, immense fortunes, and controversial figures. Yet, few names carry the weight of Kenneth Copeland, whose rise to global prominence was as swift as it was spectacular. For decades, he captivated millions with his charismatic preaching, lavish lifestyle, and promises of divine prosperity. His ministry reached millions of followers worldwide, making him one of the most influential figures in modern Christianity. Yet, as the years passed, cracks began to appear in the foundation of his ministry. What once seemed to be an unshakable empire of faith and wealth has now faced unprecedented scrutiny, culminating in a series of scandals that have sent shockwaves through both the religious world and the broader public. And now, the announcement of Kenneth Copeland's final sentence has left the world in disbelief. Goodbye forever, is what many are saying, as the consequences of his actions finally seem to catch up with him. But what exactly does this mean for the man once hailed as a spiritual leader? Can a lifetime of influence be undone by legal troubles, financial mismanagement, and public scandal? In this article, we delve into the rise and fall of Kenneth Copeland, examining how his ministry grew to global prominence and what led to his eventual downfall. The rise of Kenneth Copeland, from humble beginnings to global influence. Before the controversies, before the investigations, before the whispers of scandal, there was a story of resilience and determination. Born on December 6, 1936 in Lubbock, Texas, Kenneth Copeland came from a modest background. His family faced financial hardships, and Copeland's early years were shaped by these struggles. He worked odd jobs as a young man, including as a car salesman, to make ends meet. Little did anyone know that this young man, who was learning firsthand about financial hardship, would go on to become one of the wealthiest figures in televangelism. In his early life, Copeland also pursued a career in music. While he did not achieve lasting success in the entertainment world, his time as a musician played a significant role in shaping his public speaking abilities. It was during this period that Copeland discovered his natural charisma and talent for connecting with audiences, skills that would serve him well in the world of preaching. But Copeland's path was far from predictable. His time in the music industry was brief, and his true calling seemed to reveal itself when he became involved with Oral Roberts, a legendary televangelist in the 1960s. A spiritual awakening and the birth of Kenneth Copeland Ministries. Kenneth Copeland's life took a dramatic turn in 1962, after a spiritual awakening that altered the course of his destiny. Inspired by the teachings of Oral Roberts, Copeland dedicated himself fully to ministry, abandoning his secular pursuits. He dove deep into the Bible, seeking divine guidance, and soon felt a clear calling to spread the word of God. By 1967, Kenneth and his third wife, Gloria, had founded Kenneth Copeland Ministries, SEAM, in Fort Worth, Texas. The ministry started small local gatherings, radio programs, but the vision behind it was grand. Copeland had a dream of creating a global platform, one that would touch the lives of millions. His charisma and fiery sermons quickly set him apart, and before long, Copeland became a household name in evangelical circles. By the late 1970s, Copeland's ministry had entered the world of television, launching the Believer's Voice of Victory broadcast. The show became the cornerstone of his ministry, reaching millions with its message of faith, prosperity, and divine promises. As his television presence grew, so did his influence. By the 1980s, Kenneth Copeland's name was synonymous with the prosperity gospel, a movement that promised financial success and blessings to those who had faith and gave generously to the ministry. The prosperity gospel, promise or exploitation. The prosperity gospel, which Copeland championed, was a key factor in his rise to fame. It was a message that resonated with many followers who were struggling financially and hoping for divine intervention in their lives. The central premise was simple. Faith combined with generous financial giving could unlock divine blessings in the form of wealth, health, and success. Copeland's teachings were revolutionary for many who saw his ministry as a beacon of hope. However, as his wealth grew, so did the controversy surrounding his message. critics began to argue that Copeland and others in the prosperity movement were distorting Christian doctrine. They accused him of manipulating the faithful, encouraging them to sow financial seeds into the ministry with the promise of miraculous financial breakthroughs. But for many, those promises never materialized. Instead, some followers found themselves sacrificing financially, with little to show for it. Despite the mounting criticism, Copeland remained steadfast in his beliefs. He defended the prosperity gospel, arguing that wealth was a sign of divine favor and that his teachings were grounded in biblical truth. His supporters admired his unapologetic embrace of prosperity, while his detractors saw it as a dangerous distortion of Christian principles. A lavish lifestyle, wealth amidst faith. As Kenneth Copeland's ministry flourished, so did his wealth. By the 1990s, Copeland had amassed a fortune that few could have predicted when he first began his journey. With an estimated net worth of over $300 million, Copeland's lifestyle became the subject of widespread attention, and not just for his preaching. At the center of this controversy was his sprawling 1,500-acre estate in Fort Worth, Texas. The mansion, valued at over $7 million, stood as a symbol of Copeland's immense wealth. Inside, the mansion boasted 18,000 square feet, with 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, and stunning views of Eagle Mountain Lake. It was a far cry from the modest upbringing Copeland had experienced, and to many, it seemed to represent the excesses of his teachings on prosperity. In addition to his mansion, Copeland owned multiple private jets, including a Gulfstream VI valued at $20 million. These jets were essential, according to Copeland, for his global ministry. He argued that flying commercial airlines was akin to being in a tube with demons, a comment that sparked outrage among critics and the public alike. His personal jet fleet, luxury cars, and designer clothing stood in stark contrast to the modesty and humility traditionally associated with Christian teachings. For many, Copeland's wealth became a symbol of everything that was wrong with televangelism. It raised important questions. How could someone who preached about faith and sacrifice live such a lavish life? Was his message really about helping the faithful, or was it about self-enrichment? These questions would come to define the controversies that surrounded Copeland as his ministry grew. The scandals, legal troubles, financial mismanagement, and marital strife. By the early 2000s, Kenneth Copeland's empire began to unravel. His teachings on the prosperity gospel were controversial, and his lavish lifestyle only fueled the fire. Yet, it wasn't just the public backlash that began to threaten his legacy, it was also legal trouble. In 2007, Copeland's ministry came under investigation by the U.S. Senate as part of a broader inquiry into the financial practices of televangelists. The investigation, led by Senator Chuck Grassley, sought to determine whether Copeland and other televangelists were abusing their tax-exempt status and misusing ministry funds. Copeland's ministry resisted the investigation, refusing to provide key financial documents, which only added to the suspicion surrounding his operations. For years, Copeland had been accused of financial mismanagement, including redirecting donations meant for charitable purposes to fund his luxurious lifestyle. Investigations into these claims intensified, but Copeland maintained that everything he did was above board. However, the allegations persisted. Whispers of a final reckoning began to circulate. Kenneth Copeland's final sentence: the end of an era. As Copeland's legal troubles mounted, his personal life also began to unravel. His marriage to Gloria, which had been a cornerstone of his ministry, came under increasing strain. Insiders began to reveal that their decades-long relationship was facing unprecedented challenges. Could the once unshakable Copeland household be on the verge of falling apart? And now the final sentence looms. For many, this moment has been a long time coming. Copeland, who once held the world in his grasp, now faces the consequences of his actions. The legal charges against him, the financial improprieties, and the personal scandals have all come to a head. Kenneth Copeland's final sentence may very well mark the end of an era for his ministry, and for the prosperity gospel movement as a whole. As the world watches, the question remains, what will this final sentence mean for Copeland's legacy? Will his influence be erased by the weight of these scandals, or will his message continue to resonate with his followers? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, Kenneth Copeland's story is far from over, and his final reckoning may have only just begun. The aftermath. A man confronted by his own empire. As the world watches the closing chapter of Kenneth Copeland's ministry unfold, the reverberations of his legal battles and public scandals continue to echo through the halls of televangelism. In a quiet, almost surreal twist, Copeland's final reckoning is not just a reflection of his actions, but also a reflection of the larger world of religious broadcasting that he helped shape. To some, this is the inevitable collapse of a man who had risen too high and gone too far. To others, it is simply the closing of a chapter, the end of an era in the long and complex history of televangelism. For those who had followed Copeland's career from the beginning, the downfall was difficult to reconcile with the man they had once admired. He had been a symbol of success, a living testament to the power of faith, a man who had not only preached about prosperity but had lived it. His rise had been meteoric, and his influence was undeniable. Yet as his ministry's finances came under increasing scrutiny, and as his lavish lifestyle began to dominate the narrative surrounding him, many began to wonder if Copeland had lost touch with the very principles he once espoused. The final years. An aging icon in a changing world. In the years leading up to his downfall, Copeland's health had started to show signs of decline. At the age of 88, his once vibrant energy seemed to fade, and he found himself increasingly unable to maintain the demanding schedule of a global ministry. The stresses of legal battles, financial scrutiny, and personal issues had begun to take their toll. Some close to him noted that he had become more introspective, often pondering the legacy he would leave behind. Yet, despite the looming challenges, Copeland remained defiant, convinced that his ministry had done more good than harm. In interviews, he frequently reiterated his belief in the prosperity gospel and defended his lavish lifestyle, arguing that his wealth was a direct result of his obedience to God. But his critics were growing louder. Former followers, once enamored by his teachings, now denounced him as a charlatan who had used their faith as a means to amass wealth. The rise of social media and investigative journalism had made it easier for the public to access information about Copeland's life and ministry, leading to a wave of backlash that threatened to undo years of influence. As Copeland continued to battle legal and financial troubles, rumors began to surface that his relationship with Gloria was not as solid as it had once seemed. Although they had been a strong and united front for decades, whispers of infidelity, emotional distance, and growing tension between the couple started to surface. Some sources claimed that Gloria, long a staunch supporter of her husband's ministry, had grown increasingly disillusioned with the direction in which he was taking their empire. Whether or not these rumors were true remains unclear, but the public perception of their relationship began to shift. For many, the once untouchable couple was no longer the perfect image of marital and ministerial success. The legacy. What happens when faith becomes fortune? Now, as Kenneth Copeland's legal issues take center stage, his once unshakable legacy is being reevaluated. For all the millions of followers who watched his broadcasts, bought his books, and contributed to his ministry, the question that looms largest is whether the prosperity gospel was ever truly the path to salvation, or whether it was simply a vehicle for self-promotion. In the broader context of American Christianity, Copeland's story is both a cautionary tale and a symbol of the excesses that have come to define certain strands of modern evangelicalism. His life, which began in relative obscurity, became a microcosm of the tension between spiritual and material wealth. His teachings resonated with a deeply aspirational audience that saw faith as a gateway to financial success, but it also alienated many within the traditional Christian community who felt that the gospel had been distorted beyond recognition. One thing is certain, Copeland's story is a reflection of the world he inhabited, a world where faith and wealth often collided in ways that many found troubling. His rise to prominence was made possible by the very television networks and media platforms that continue to shape the religious landscape today. His willingness to embrace technology and media as tools for ministry set a precedent for future televangelists. But it also exposed the inherent dangers of turning religious conviction into a marketable commodity. The controversy surrounding Copeland has left a lasting impact on the prosperity gospel movement. Many of his followers who had once believed in his message now find themselves disillusioned by the very teachings that once brought them hope. But for others, Copeland remains a hero, a man who stood firm in his faith, despite the odds stacked against him. His defenders argue that his critics failed to see the full picture, focusing only on his wealth, while ignoring the positive influence he had on millions of lives. New facts, insights into Kenneth Copeland's inner circle and hidden secrets. In the wake of Copeland's downfall, some startling revelations have begun to surface, shedding light on the inner workings of his ministry and the secrets that had been carefully guarded for decades. One of the most shocking revelations came from a former high-ranking member of Kenneth Copeland Ministries, who spoke anonymously about the financial practices that took place behind the scenes. According to this source, Copeland's empire was not as financially transparent as it appeared. While Copeland repeatedly claimed that his ministry was a non-profit organization, insiders alleged that a significant portion of the funds donated by followers was funneled into private accounts controlled by Copeland and his inner circle. These funds, they claim, were often used for lavish purchases, including high-end real estate and personal investments, which were never disclosed to the public. Furthermore, the source revealed that Copeland had established a network of businesses and shell companies, all operating under the guise of supporting his ministry's mission. These businesses, which included real estate holdings, private aviation services, and luxury car dealerships, were allegedly used to funnel ministry funds into Copeland's personal wealth. While these claims have yet to be fully substantiated, they have added fuel to the fire of accusations that Copeland used his ministry for personal gain.
Laughter is a deterrent to pain. Now, he said at Johns Hopkins, you know what I'm saying, Hopkins University, they have proven it. And they have people that lead in laughter. They lead in laughter. And they'll say, I don't have anything to laugh about. And they'll say, that's all right. You just go ahead. That your physical brain and body cannot tell the difference between a put-on laugh and a real belly laugh. It works. And like I said, a merry heart does good like a medicine. So, the joy of the Lord is our strength. So how do we count it all joy? Well, ha, ha, ha. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, ha. Ha, 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 ha. The Associated Press said that Joe Biden is president. Ha! Yeah.
In addition to these financial revelations, new details about Copeland's personal life have emerged. For years, he had been known for his fiery sermons and public persona, but behind the scenes, it is alleged that he was a far more private and complex figure. Sources within the ministry have described Copeland as deeply paranoid, often fearing that his critics were plotting against him. This paranoia allegedly extended to his relationships with other evangelical leaders, many of whom grew increasingly disillusioned with Copeland's approach to ministry. His refusal to cooperate with investigations and his secrecy regarding financial matters only fueled suspicions that there was more to the story than met the eye. In the final years of his ministry, Copeland became increasingly isolated, surrounded only by a small group of loyal followers who continued to defend his teachings. These followers, according to reports, were fiercely protective of Copeland, often blocking any criticism and ensuring that the public only saw the version of him that he wanted them to see. However, as legal troubles mounted and the scrutiny intensified, even this inner circle began to fracture. Some members of Copeland's team were reportedly shocked by the extent of the financial misconduct and distanced themselves from the ministry, leading to a slow but steady erosion of the support network that had once buoyed Copeland's empire. The future. What lies ahead for Copeland and his ministry? As Kenneth Copeland faces his final reckoning, the future of his ministry remains uncertain. While some continue to stand by him, others are questioning whether the prosperity gospel will survive in the aftermath of his legal battles. The once dominant movement, which promised believers wealth and success in exchange for faith and financial contributions, is now facing a reckoning of its own. The wider Christian community, especially the evangelical church, will have to come to terms with the legacy left by figures like Copeland. His story will undoubtedly serve as a cautionary tale for future generations of religious leaders, reminding them of the dangers of mixing faith with fortune. Whether Copeland will be remembered as a visionary or a fraud remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, the world of televangelism will never be the same. For now, the public waits to see how Copeland's story will end. Will he face the consequences of his actions, Or will his supporters continue to rally behind him, dismissing the accusations as part of a larger conspiracy? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the legacy of Kenneth Copeland is far from over, and his story will continue to shape the world of televangelism for years to come.